What is it that the media misses when we talk about events like this?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think the biggest thing, obviously the usual focus is like the 5 W's, right? Who, what, where, when, why. Why is always going to be the biggest one. Obviously, you know, you're going to have people come on and inject opinions as to why they think that this person made this decision or whatever. But sometimes, I mean, obviously some of those things are going to come out through the course of investigation or whatever. But the biggest thing that I think that people are thirsty for, or they want to see, is like, okay, well, this is a reality in our life right now. Actually, it's been around for a long time. You know, you can change and skew the statistics all you want, but massive attacks or whatever, they've been around for a long time. Usually it comes from people who feel like, you know, they're not getting heard. They don't feel like they're having their voice heard, and they feel that this is the only way that I can speak to where somebody will hear me, or, you know, a perceived injustice. But whatever the reason is I think what most people want to know is like, hey, if this is a reality in my life, then how could I maybe know enough to remove myself from a situation if something's about to happen?
Or how can I help?
How could I help? How could I prevent it? You know, there's a fine separation between, okay, I've tipped over now and I'm going to go do, like, for example, a mass shooting, or I'm going to go kill myself. Either way, the aftermath, I mean, obviously in this case with Texas, I mean, couldn't you imagine? And even the people that weren't there, like the day that happened, me and my wife were looking at we were actually going to church. We were getting ready to go to church. And that's something I think about everywhere I go. Somebody would probably call me hypervigilant, or, you know.
But that's because you've been trained that way.
Some of it. So I think some of that too is recognizing there's a fine line too between being hypervigilant and just being aware of your surroundings. You're in a situation somewhere and you don't like the way you feel. If you know that gut feeling that you hear people talk about, it's not a sixth sense. It is actually the fact that your brain is processing information so quickly that it's already to Z. You're still on B and D or whatever.
Your body's ahead of the brain.
And your body's ahead of the curve because it's built in. It's a built-in survival mechanism. So pay attention to that, and you know, ask the question. Don't be afraid to ask the question why.
But then comes the question, what do you do with that information? And I think that's where a lot of people struggle.
Yeah. So well, there's a couple different avenues that we're talking now about maybe potentially upskilling, right? Or at least, you know, the old saying, if I see something, say something. Well, what am I even looking at? How do I even say something? I don't know what it is, whatever. You know, sometimes it is just asking a question. You go find that security manager, or you could call 911, or know maybe what some of those other numbers are. Like if it's something that you know for a fact is not right, you know, is potentially something terrorism related or something like that, you should know enough to be like, okay, I need to go seek out the appropriate professional and call them. Right? But it may not always be that easy.
If the goal, it sounds like you think most people are just, I don't know if immune is the right word, but just not paying attention. And what you would like to see, and your goal is to have people pay better attention, which is part of that gut feeling. I mean, do you think that's kind of where people need to go? Is they need to take it upon themselves to make themselves more?
Some of it might be, I don't know if it's empathy or what it is, but it's where we're so focused into our own thing that's going on, and then we're completely, totally bombarded by massive amounts of information all the time. Then you add in the fact that, like, okay, I'm staring at this, you know, 3-inch by 5-inch piece of black glass, reflective glass that's looking at me, and my functional field of view is on that all the time. So because of visual or perceptual field, I'm not seeing everything else that's around me anyways.
So part of the problem is we're just disengaged from our surroundings.
Absolutely, because we haven't, you know, depending on where you live and what you do, and that's just a fact, like your level of survival is dependent on different things. You know, you bring, like my example of somebody from the country versus somebody from the city. There's things that out in the country that a person from the city wouldn't understand are potentially dangerous situations because they've never had that experience. advice for, you remember like Crocodile Dundee when he's like walking down the street and he's climbing up street signs and stuff to figure out where he's at because his surroundings are totally different. He hadn't built an adaptation to that yet. Sometimes we build so much adaptation to our environment that we start to paint things out. But there are people who are just defensively minded and are looking to enhance their awareness and enhance their ability to not be a victim. That's some of it. It's like, I don't want to be a victim, so I pay attention to what's going on around me. And it's not easy to do either.
Right, I was going to say, how do you get those other people to want to do that without raising their fear level or panic level?
Well, I would say the more you educate yourself, actually, the less fear, the less panic you will feel.
It sounds like you really want people to just kind of take it upon themselves to just be better prepared in general. And that's what you teach, kind of.
Right. I mean, at the worst case scenario, if you go up to find a law enforcement officer or call 911 and say, hey, we just saw this, and give the best description that you can of what it was you saw, and who it was, so on and so forth, and say, we're not sure, but this is what we saw, and it didn't seem right. It's better than nothing. It's better than nothing.